great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute after the show today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me and for your interest in my music.
Absolutely. So before we get into your latest album, Handmade, I want to begin with 6 years ago, this pandemic was changing our lives, changing musicians all over. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you create and do things today?
Oh, it's a tricky question. I don't think, to be honest with you, that it changed very much the way in which I approach the creative process, but it certainly, gave me a lot of free time back then, in the moment to create. Actually, it was I feel bad to say this, but it was a very creative time for me. It was just you couldn't leave the house practically, and we were there. Had a little bit of unemployment and help. Me and my wife from here in the United States. Funny enough, sometimes it has the things that are very, like we were being taken care more than in Europe. Funny as musicians, so we could, we were doing well. Okay. Of course, there wasn't much work around, so it actually connected me a lot with, practicing the piano and creating music. And then when it was over, I don't think it has affected much, to be honest with you, in the way in which I approach my normal process. But I do remember, some of the music that we have in this last album was crafted back in that day. So
Yeah.
it was not bad for me, I have to say.
Yeah. So talk to me about Handmade. Talk to me about the new album. What was kind of the overarching vision for this album?
Um, well, to be honest with you, also I don't have much of a narrative. Before I start working, it's more like I write music. I was explaining in another interview short ago, like, some people has this approach that everything has to have a concept and a narrative before, and I was, being a little bit critical with, actually, with a composition teacher I had here in the States, which he, at some point in the class, he said, you shouldn't be writing a note until you know exactly what you want to say or what you want to talk about. And I think that's a big mistake. I think that music is music, and I think that the work of art, of course, you can create something pointing to something specific. In fact, you mentioned the pandemic, and this last album has I would say the longest piece. So the main piece is a suite called the Suite de los Abrazos, the Embraces Suite, and that is definitely focused in the pandemic, and it has a narrative that goes through different moments of the pandemic time. But normally, like 90% of the time when I create music, I don't have a narrative. I don't know what I want to say. I don't have a plan. I'm just writing music. And because in the way of doing it that way, I believe and I bet, my aim is that by doing that, I'm just letting something get into the music that does not go through my intellectual process of a message having to be conveyed in advance, but just pour in there something out of my, I don't know where, like that magic space where art lives, where creation lives, that I think is very magical and very, and I want to be surprised by that. I want to be part of the, like, one more in the audience at some point, and let the music flow and let the music. And of course, when I sit to compose, I follow a bunch of techniques and dedicate a lot of time to try to transform and to hand make, going to the album, to that clay that is the original idea into a piece of music, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is. And that is a process that has a lot of technical approach to it. But I'm not trying to point the music in a certain direction, make you feel happy or make you feel sad, or talk about my childhood in Mendoza, Argentina. It's not the way I work, to be honest with you. So many times I put together an album and it's a bunch of pieces that are there, and then I try to find if there is some kind of narrative or something that is going on. In this case, the idea of hand making, right? But that is more a result of something that gets connected later than something that is at the beginning. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, it certainly does. So I'm curious, how did a kid from Argentina get into this world, become a Grammy winner, and have this career that you've had? How take me back to your beginnings. How did this all become your destiny?
as they say, to the waiter, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. You know the joke, right? Well, practice, practice. I think that, I flee Argentina in 1996, and because of the political situation, the cultural situation there got very bad. I was very lucky to leave, to start working in the mid 80s in Argentina, which was everything was blossoming there because we had like the end of the military dictatorship in 83, and then everything exploded in Buenos Aires, and I was part of that generation, of that movement that was so full of musicians and so much so creative people, and we were 20 something, 20 nothing, and we were doing things and playing here and playing there, and we were on TV, and we were like a bunch of people that we didn't know very much what we were doing. The music was starting to take shape. This music that combines tango and Argentinian music with a lot of jazz and contemporary stuff, and many musicians, very creative people, and we were everywhere. And then in the 90s, the whole picture changed a lot. So that I had to, leave Argentina in order to be able to keep creating and to be doing and to be, keep learning and progressing in what I was doing, in this direction of music. That's how I landed in Europe. I was in Barcelona for 10 years, from 96 to 2006. And then, it was like always, I'm always looking for challenge, so as I don't fall asleep, like I'm looking for, okay, where's the next challenge? Where's something that is bigger than me, that is, where everybody's better than me, so I'll get my ass kicked and I'll get better, That's the way in which I function. So I said, okay, New York. And I was already working with a couple of cats from here, and I had come a couple of times, and I said, let's give that a try. So I presented a project in Barcelona to come to New York, and I got a grant. To cut it short, I got a fantastic grant that would keep me fed and housed for 1 year in New York. So it was like, great, let's go there and see what happens. And I plan to be here for 2 or 3 years, and I've been here for the last 20, So obviously things went well, started going very well. I got associated with Paquito de Rivera and with Arturo Farrell right off the bat, like 1 year in New York, I was playing at Smalls with the band that I put together with Donnie McCaslin and Chris Cheek. And, so it was like a dream, it was like, wow. Maybe I stayed a couple more years, and then New York, as has this, the carrot in front of the horse, that you're moving and the carrot is moving, but you're always chasing. Oh, and these things can get bigger and bigger, and more interesting, and that's that's how I develop my music. And you were mentioning the Latin Grammy a few years ago and everything, but those are more consequences of the hard work. Honestly, I'm nothing so special, I'm just one guy writing maybe a different music, maybe a music from his hometown, from his land, mixed with other things. And with years and a lot of work, maybe I found a voice, I found, my own thing, my own sound. And I think that is what opens or has opened some doors for me, like sounding different, in a way. But, still so much to learn, still so much that I'm learning every day from working with great musicians and, from being here, so that I don't feel like, like I'm at the end of anything. I'm always at the beginning with a lot of curiosity and a lot of, drive into getting better, honestly.
So on that road to Carnegie, I'm curious, what was the first live jazz show you saw that blew you away?
Ooh, the first one. Oh my. Uh, Tricky. A few of them. Marta Argerich at the Colón Theater playing with the Argentinian Symphony Orchestra, 3 piano concertos in one night, and being blown away by her playing. And then a jazz guy from Argentina, Enrique Villegas, very famous pianist back in the day. First time I saw live jazz, I went to see him. I was like 14 or 15 maybe. My brother took me, and it was also like, mind-blowing. For the first ones, I would say probably those guys. If I have to have a memory, of course, first time I heard Keith Jarrett, I almost died. And another one that impacted me very, very strongly was listened to the Pat Metheny group live in Argentina, Buenos Aires, with Lyle Mays. That was, what was it, 80 something? Probably I was starting to be kind of a jazz guy and practicing a little bit. And man, I came back home, and I remember like on Monday I had like 10 students. At the time, I called all my students to tell them I was quitting teaching, and I started practicing like kind of 6 hours a day, uh, like, every day of the week for some time. I got such an impact. Like, I thought I was already, like a piano player, and I was cool, and I realized I didn't know shit about anything. And that has such a strong impact in me. I still remember, listening to Lyle Mays live. It was like, what? Listening to that band live, I said, I want to do that when I grow up. I want to be at that level, I want to be able to achieve such an incredible music, perform like that, and it blew my mind. It wasn't the first one, for sure. I was already a musician, but just, I don't know, telling you things that really impacted me very, very strongly.
I love it. What is it that gets you up every day because the thing about being a musician, it's all about evolution, and there's so many things that come into into your windshield. What gets you up every day to create this music, to evolve, and to keep people happy?
How about that keeping people happy part?
Well, just with your
Can you
music,
can
people love
you
your music. You're a very decorated musician, and people obviously are very happy to get your records. What is that? What is that energy for you?
Okay, that's nice. It's good to know that. If I show you my bank account and how much I'm making, I would think the opposite. I would think that people are not happy and don't like my music, but that's the sign of the times, right? Like we make everything, but everybody gets paid except for us, right? Like
Yeah.
engineers get paid, venue owners get paid, producers get paid, promoters, managers, everybody gets paid, and of course, the owner of Spotify gets paid.
Yeah.
But I don't get paid. I never get paid. I don't know what's the trick. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. But it's good to know that you are happy, or some other people are happy. So, and now, without being so sarcastic, sorry for that. Um, I think that the thing that keeps me going is my own need to produce. I really feel that if I'm touching anybody's soul with my music, if I'm moving anybody, then that's when I get paid. Honestly, it's like I do it for myself. It's a very selfish thing. I don't think, as some musicians talk about, or, you create for others. I think I do at the end of the day, but honestly, I need to do it. It's my own need. I wouldn't know how to be alive without making music, without producing new music. But of course, it's very nice to have that thing, and I get that sometimes, at the concerts and some comments, from people and reviews, and that people really get things out of what I do, and um, about evolution, about how that music evolves. Also, I have no idea. I'm very much an audience person, listening and looking at that guy that creates that thing that looks like me and has the same name as I do. But to be honest with you, I guess I evolve because I study and analyze more music, and I take more care of things. So if I listen to my older records and current records, I think that things are better crafted. But none of those things are an intellectual, concern to me, if that makes any sense. It's more like something that happens because I take music seriously. I really care about what I do, and I care about what my colleagues say. Like I'm one of those musicians that, when one of these, when Paquito de Rivera calls me to do something or to arrange something, or when Vince Mendoza called me once to, to complete an arrangement for something he was doing with one of these German big bands, then I feel like, oh, then I'm probably doing something right. If Vince, thinks of me for something, those are the kind of validations that, that makes you feel, okay, for the bad days, this is good for the bad days, when you think that, again, you don't have any money and nobody cares, and why are we doing this, and it's not trendy, and times are not going in that direction, like we are totally outdated, like creating good music and creating complex and profound or ambitious music is not in fashion. It's not trendy at all. Why are we doing this? And you realize you can't do anything else. You do what you have to do, what you need to do, right?
For sure. So let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, everyone on the bandstand, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm a good composer, a mediocre pianist, and a guy that is a strong believer on what he does and that likes and needs to push that idea forward. I think that as any artist, I'm in search of love and in search of being loved and accepted by others, and I do that. I don't know how to play soccer properly, so I do that, by creating music, But at the end, is we are crying for attention. We are very selfish. We want people to love us for what we do, And in my case, is music, And my own perception is I'm as I said, my music is good. My piano playing not so good, but my music is good. At this point, I'm confident enough to think that it's I'm saying something with it, and that makes me happy. I listened to this last album, and I think I detach myself from what I do, and I'm critical enough to know when something is good. Like, okay, this is okay, and I think this album is okay. No complaints.
Speaking of, if anybody wants to pick up a copy, is Bandcamp the best place, or where can they go?
They can go to Bandcamp. Yeah, my label put it there. It's Club del Disco. It's an Argentinian label, and they can go to the platforms, of course, and they can buy it from the Club del Disco website. I think they can buy downloads and in Bandcamp as well, and they can write to me. I'll send them a copy.
Okay, I love it. So great to meet you. Thank you so much for opening up about your world of music, the album. Best of luck. I'll put all the links in the show notes.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. And yeah.
Neon Jazz.